Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Hey Sister. Hey Sister, how are you doing?
Hey, sister, doing well, doing well. How about
Doing
yourself?
well. Hey, well, I'm doing well. I can't complain. Yesterday, I celebrated my wedding anniversary.
Yes,
Woohoo!
congratulations.
Shout out to my
22, correct?
22, deuce, deuce. Yes, 22 years. And we did a little staycation in the spa day. You can't ask for anything more. At least I can't ask for anything more. So if you're tuning in to Hey Sister and you showed us some love on the gram or on the book, we thank you. We appreciate you. And thank you for showing us some love. We really do appreciate and value everyone. If you're watching tonight, let us know where you're watching from. Don't forget to like, follow, share, subscribe, pass the word on about what we're doing here at Hey Sister. And also, don't forget to join the conversation in the comments. That's where the action is, in the comments. So, sister, it looks like you're in a secure location again. Where you
I
at?
am. I am in the secure location again, and excited. I came home to spend some time and yesterday to celebrate since I missed my homecoming and you had such a great time at yours, came home here to celebrate my Southern University Jaguars and watch them go up against one of their in-conference rivals, Jackson State University. Unfortunately, we came up a little short at the end, and like I said, unfortunately, but as you can tell from my voice, I had a decent enough time.
It's always great when you can have a good time, right?
Yeah, and it's always great when you can go back and run into folks who knew you back then, right? So,
Absolutely. Well, in typical Hey Sister fashion, y'all, we have to start off with some hot topics this evening. So, um, if you're watching or if you're just getting glimpse of it from your local news, I wanted to talk about justice or just us courtrooms in America. What we are seeing now with the Kyle Rittenhouse case, with the McDaniels in Georgia, things that are going on in these courtrooms, it's so very interesting. And so I started reflecting on this and was thinking back, like the first kind of national trial in which everyone watched for me probably was the OJ Simpson trial, right? I
mm,
know I was thinking about others before, like those national trials, like a um what's his name, Charles Manson or something like that. But we didn't have 24-hour news cycle. We didn't have a court TV at that time. It's like it's nonstop.
mhm.
But to see the shenanigans of these of the judge in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, of one of the defense attorneys talking about we don't need no more black pastors up in here, and I was like, what is going on? So I don't know about you, but we've always known about the system, and we've had obviously lots of conversation about systemic racism, but to see it just continue to show up even after we've had our so-called reckoning and awakening, I'm just flabbergasted by these people.
So, sister, I don't know if it's on my side or what, but you broke up pretty badly there. I know you said something about systemic racism or you don't know what have you, but I didn't hear you for a moment there. It was very robotic sounding. So I don't know if that's the case across the board. Um,
Well, if
but
y'all can't hear me, let me know. I see Keisha responded. She said she was in shock here. And our guest in the back studio said she could hear fine.
okay, all right. Well, then it's probably because I'm in the secret location.
You might need to tell some folks shut off some other device.
Well, I am the drop off because drop off and drop back in and figure this out. Because Yeah, it's not good. Anyway, as far as these court cases are concerned and the shenanigans that are we're seeing at play, it's really unfortunate. You know, when you are I guess I just look at it like this. We fought so hard in this country to be on equal footing. And obviously, we know there is no equal footing because the system was not designed for us to ever be on equal footing, no matter how hard we fight or what we do. But it's the blatancy of some of these actions for me. And I was like, when I saw the clip, because of course, I've had to stop watching in order to be a productive citizen, and also I think to what we'll be talking about later, to start winning and not spinning. You have to cut off some of it, but um, when a defense attorney says we need to stop having black pastors show up, that they're going to influence. Now he ain't seen the man there. He only heard about it afterwards that Al Sharpton was supposedly there to comfort Ahmaud Arbery's mother. It was like, wow. So, how do we say that these things are not about race? But I didn't hear you say we shouldn't have pastors there. I didn't hear you say we shouldn't have clergymen there. I didn't hear you say we shouldn't have a prayer circle outside. You specifically said we should not have black pastors. So if that's not a,
That's making it political.
because that's making it political. No, that's making it about race because you called out the race of the pastors. Because as somebody pointed out online, you didn't say white pastors couldn't be there. So you made it racial, and yet you are but if someone said you just made it a racial thing, then you would say that person is somehow reverse racism and all these other shenanigans and buzzwords that come up. So I did not, that was so unfortunate. No, that was so indicative of where we are still today.
Mm-hmm.
But the frightening part for me, because I'm not shocked, the frightening part for me is when it is this blatant and it is this deliberate and it's this out front in your face, then how do we ever expect to get a fair day in court? Like you said, justice or just us. How do we ever expect to have any equality, equity, justice, righteousness, anything when it's that blatant?
Mm-hmm.
And when the tables turn, we never see judges giving the level of compassion,
Latitude,
latitude,
compassion.
compassion, empathy. We don't see that when it's the reverse. I don't know how. And then, there's, I'm going to say the word wrong, but what infantilization? Uh, you saw someone, we've seen plenty of pictures where this young man, after he shot and killed two people, seemingly had absolutely no remorse for his actions, but got on the got on the stand, and you would have swore he was having a nervous breakdown. And to pity that, it's not, again, not shocking, but it's frightening because the question for me becomes, so what can we do to ever get equity? Or are we just supposed to live in a society knowing if we commit a crime, we don't get the same day in court? If we're the victim of a crime, we don't get the same day in court. Are we just supposed to accept that? And that feels like a really terrible thing to have to accept, especially if you are a tax-paying, law-abiding citizen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Boy, when they talk about them law-abiding citizens, honey, or when they talk about them suburban moms, I'll be talking about me. But I'm gonna go on about some. We got a comment here that said, "I was so glad the judge in the case in Georgia handled it the way he did, and the attorney could keep his apologies." We got another comment here says it's endemic of a system and culture geared toward one culture. Consideration of others becomes an affront to the corrupt system. Well, we can't have bring this guest on because she's gonna tell us more about all of that stuff. Uh, so we're excited about that. Now we're gonna go into this next hot topic because it brings me joy. Silk Sonic for the win. Victory once again. They had already released a third of the album in singles, but the full album dropped on Friday. I missed the live that they did with D Nice, but if you don't know who Silk Sonic is, it is the collaboration between one Anderson Paak and Bruno Mars. The album is 9 songs, 31 minutes, everyone from beginning to end. It gives you all the Silky Soul vibes of Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes and uh anything from the 70s, just bring you just sheer kind of joy, happiness in music. The Dells, Brothers Johnson, all of that. And for those who were not big fans of or not know Anderson Paak, he's been around for a while, but it's kind of like this is going to do for him, I think, what 24 Karat did for Bruno. Because a lot of people, because Bruno was very popish, so they didn't really know it, right? Anderson Paak is really kind of different kind of vibe, and the people didn't really know that music. But this collaboration, what a win, victory. And have you listened to the album yet, sister?
I have not.
All right.
And but I did see someone say something about Silk Sonic needs to add her and they should be a new Lucy Pearl. But no, I don't I didn't listen to it. But I mean, look, we all like the first little single that dropped and it gets mad play on the radio. So I'm sure and by radio I mean streaming devices as well. And streaming services. I mean, because I mean, who's really listening to the radio now? But I think that
I listen to the satellite radio.
satellite, yes, yes. Shout out to the other Kimberly Wilson, our friend of the show, SVP over there at Sirius
Sirius
XM
XM
and
and
Pandora.
Pandora. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that this will be, to your point, a great thing for Anderson Paak. I I what I knew about him was similar to what I knew about Travis Scott. I know, weird, but just had heard about their stories of struggle because he had a whole commercial or whatever where he was talking about the fact that he was homeless for so long in pursuit of his musical career. So I'm just very happy that he is in this place now. And I think that tells you, it always makes me think of the Bible verse, the race isn't always given to the swift, but to the one who endureth to the end. And so I'm happy for him.
Yeah, me too. And so then our last hot topic for the night. So the Typical Massacre got some mad play on Tuesday. Y'all already know we did a whole show about Typicalville film.com. Go to the website. We dropped the concept video trailer already for you. We are in the last 23 days of the Seed and Spark campaign, so we can get this production to the finish line. So what were you thinking when your phone started blowing up and they were like, girl, they talked about the Typical Massacre on Queen Sugar?
Yeah, it happened. Actually, my phone didn't start blowing up. I got on Twitter and then I started seeing comments about it. And so one of the showrunner for Queen Sugar had posted a Smithsonian article about the Thibodeau massacre. And for those who don't know and never really watched the show, I guess, Demetria and I are from Thibodaux, Louisiana originally. And so they referenced, he said he put out an article from Smithsonian Magazine about it. And one of his writers responded to say, hey, one of my friends, who is our producer, Davita Chanel Smith, is working on this a documentary about it. And when she posted that, that's of course when we were a lot of retweets and shares and things like that started happening. So it certainly helped fuel some things. We did receive some monetary donations from the show's one of the show's producers, and again, the additional publicity is extremely helpful. We are about we raised a little over $6,000 of our $15,000 goal, and I feel firmly that this is something that we can do, but I really want it to be something that we do. um I know I'm not the best at reaching out and asking for help in that regard, but I hope people understand how important this story is to tell, and that when they go to our website and then go to our donate page, they can head over to our Seed and Spark fundraising campaign. um you know, it's rare that you have someone say, I want to do a documentary, make this film about a story that hasn't been told in their hometown, speak to descendants of its victims, and go through the process of the research, finding the team, really a grounds up approach. And that's exactly what we're taking. And with Seed and Spark, you pledge how much you would like to donate to the campaign. But unless we hit a certain number, we don't get the money. You just your account won't be charged. So we really need to get everyone to support it. And like I said, be a part of the process, especially if you're from Thibodaux, Louisiana, or you have roots in Louisiana.
All right. Well, y'all heard it here. Everybody go to ThibodauxvilleFilm.com, click on donate. Well, it don't matter the amount. No amount is too small, no amount is too large. So we want y'all to donate today. All right. Well, you are tuned in live right now to Hey Sister. We are so excited to have our guest. We're gonna bring her up now because we've got a little bit long-winded, but um we're so excited to have her come on tonight to really talk about a topic that is really impacting a lot of people, and that's burnout. you know um and so Dr. Kimberly Wilson, she is a licensed marriage family therapist. She is an organizational psychologist. She's a retired Marine, so happy Veterans Day.
Yeah.
Speaker, author, and executive coach. And what she does is she assists organizations to address systemic challenges such as workplace culture, with an emphasis on burnout and executive coaching for women. And she has something called Burnout Cure, y'all. So we're gonna bring her up because we need to. Some of y'all, if you need the cure, go ahead and drop in the comments that you're ready for the cure. Hey, Dr. Kimberly, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. Hey, sister, Demetria and Christina. I'm pleased to be here today.
We are so happy to
Happy to
have you.
have
So
you.
first, if you could just tell us a little bit about your story. Why did you get into this work? And tell us a little bit more about who you are.
Okay, I'll try and give you the Cliff Notes version so nobody goes to sleep. So, my story starts with a trauma just before I entered into the military, and faced systemic racism through the Detroit Police Department as I tried to prosecute the person that assaulted me, and I joined the military to get away. Little did I know that while I was in there, I would be assaulted again twice. And because of those assaults, you cannot be a weak woman in the military, right?
Mhm.
So it got me into a cycle of overwork and overwhelm to prove myself, not need help, and to be an independent person. And I was handsomely rewarded with promotions, accolades, and awards. Then, when I got out and retired, I continued that cycle again and got into overwork, overwhelm in the civilian sector, working with. I was a county manager for a large community mental health organization, and I would be in my car crying at lunchtime. Two young infants just burning out. My husband worked in other states, uh, and I just had no resources, and I didn't want to ask for help.
Mhm.
And my children would often see me at my worst. And then during the pandemic, there was another level of burnout again. So I would always burn out, recover, burn out, recover. I was stuck in this cycle and never really getting out of it. And then during the pandemic, that's when mental health was in fashion.
Mhm.
Everyone needed help with their mental health challenges. And I found myself working 14 to 19-hour days, no kidding. And that's when and my doctor said, you know what, you are pre-diabetic, you're pre-high cholesterol, you're overweight. So I had to find a system that worked for me so that I wouldn't continue in this path. And when I began to look at all the work I'd done with women and other clients and organizations, it kind of resonated. It's like I've been working on burnout. I didn't even realize that that's what I was doing, and that's was my calling, and that's why the similar type of people came to me. So that's what got me into this work. I'm a
Okay.
native Detroiter, and have one sister.
All right. Well, what is burnout, right? Because we've been hearing a lot about it, and even if you said with the pandemic, mental health definitely became in fashion. But I think as now we're hearing more and more about this great resignation, I think it's
Absolutely.
revealing that people are burnt out. So, how do you define burnout? What is it, and what are the signs of burnout?
Right. And it's burnout is different than stress. So let's start there. So stress is a short-term situational thing, and it mimics burnout, but there's going to be some resolution. You might experience the same symptoms, some fatigue, some anxiety, but there's typically resolution. Like if you need to study for a big exam, or you need to do a presentation for work, or you need to prepare something for your children, it's going to be over. But burnout tends to be long term. It was first coined in 1979 by Dr. Herbert Freudenberger, and who recognized it a couple of years ago as a medical crisis. It's a medical illness. It is typically characterized by inefficacy, excuse me, my throat is a little dry, exhaustion, and cynicism. So those are the three characteristics of burnout. And it's like I said, it's long term. People begin to feel like they're just completely ineffectual. They experience a lack of energy, a lack of confidence, and a lack of enthusiasm for their work. But now so many people have extended the term burnout to a variety of situations. You can almost say, I'm burnt out on this hairstyle. I'm burnt out on going to my relatives. Uh, but it's medical definition applies to work, but it can be about other situations as well.
So I want to get those three characteristics so I can put them in the chat for folks. Inefficacy. So inefficacy means not being effective, right?
Correct.
So
Exactly.
cynicism, and then there was one more that you
Uh,
mentioned.
yes, a lack of enthusiasm.
Okay.
So you just have no motivation. You don't know why you're here, why you're doing what you're doing. And you've
Well,
probably seen that show up in many people
well,
in their
we
role.
have a comment here. It says most of us have burnout and don't realize it. That's Sunny LaBeouf there, friend
Absolutely.
of the show, past guest. Yeah. So, and it's these characteristics are, I'm like, oh yeah, because we hear a lot of cynicism now, especially, just as we go about our day to day, and get caught up in the the news cycle. And so you said it's a medical condition. Tell us more about how is it a medical condition, and how can we get help for it as a medical condition?
Right. So the World Health Organization, so they've just recently, I think it was 2019, defined it as there's now an ICD code, which makes it a medical condition. Now,
Mhm.
whether or not someone's insurance company will pay for it is another thing. So there are a host of illnesses that tend to go along with burnout. A lot of times it's gut distress, so irritable bowel syndrome, things like that. You have anxiety, a host of mental health issues, depression, um, overeating, a lack of eating. And I always think that is so interesting how burnout and stress affects some people to overeat, whereas other people stop eating.
Mhm.
Um, so now, not many physicians actually will diagnose that, but it's available as a diagnosis.
Mhm.
And a lot of times people will go through their EAP. Is that a comment I see? Oh, Christina put the health line. Oh, thank you. Uh, go through their EAP first, which is Employee Assistance Program. And that's a really good place to start to get help to even begin to recognize what's happening to you. Because I think a lot of people just feel like, um, it's become so common that we don't even recognize it. Like Ms. LaBeouf was just saying,
Mhm.
it's a condition of our work, especially healthcare workers now.
Mhm. Mhm. So one of the things you had said earlier, which I thought was so profound, is that you experienced a trauma that pushed you into this cycle of overworking and overwhelm. And it sounded like that was like an avoidance, right? A little bit of an avoidance tactic. Um, how else is that common for us to, in avoidance of a trauma or avoidance of a situation, that we put ourselves in on this path to burnout?
I think for most people, it can be one, but I think most people experience it through syndrome
Mm.
and poor boundaries. That's what tends to come up most for me when I work with men and women who are dealing with burnout. Definitely poor boundaries and imposter syndrome. Just doing more because they feel as if they're not capable. So they fear that someone's going to discover that they're not talented enough. So they're going to do more so that it's superb and beyond anything you've ever seen, but still feeling like it's inadequate.
Mm. Hmm. Sister, you have a question.
So, Dr. Kimberly, I know that you're going to give us the cure for burnout, but what does one do if they are experiencing, say, one or two of the symptoms and not all three? So it doesn't have maybe that classic definition of burnout. How then should they approach they're feeling? So if it's high on the inefficacy side, or if it's inefficacy and lack of enthusiasm, but maybe not as much cynicism or something like that, how do they approach it? And should they just approach it the same as you would if you had all three characteristics?
And let me repeat your question and make sure that I answered
Okay.
appropriately. So I think what you said is if someone is experiencing some of the symptoms, but not all of those, how do they approach it differently or similarly as someone who's experiencing all three? Is that correct?
Yes, that's a much better way of stating it.
Okay, absolutely. And let me also state that there are also stages. There are about 12 stages. And
Mhm.
as you get into burnout deeper, the higher you go up in stages, the more dangerous burnout becomes. But you approach it in absolutely the same way. And the first step in addressing burnout is even recognizing that there's something wrong. And usually the people who are experiencing burnout don't even know that they know that something's wrong, but it's typically a colleague, a friend, a person, a parent who notices what's going on, what's wrong with you. You seem to be more irritable, you seem to be frustrated, you need to leave work, why don't you do something? They tend to stop engaging in things that give them joy, and they don't tend to respond to that well to hear that they're not behaving like themselves. So recognizing that it's happening. And did that answer your question, or did I ramble
No,
a
you
little
did.
bit?
You well, first of all, I didn't know that there were stages of 12 stages at that of burnout. I think, and where I was going sort of with that as well is, recently I heard about this article or a survey that was done specifically of Black women, and many of them said that
Mm,
they did not want to return to work post pandemic because they don't want to deal with racism, for example. And
right.
so, with so many of these different factors playing a part, it's like, how do you know what part is burnout versus what part is the systemic, racism that you're dealing with, or the systemic sexism that you're dealing with? I mean, there are just so many factors. So I was just curious, like,
So many isms we
yeah,
dealing
how do
with.
you start parsing? And then, to be fair, are organizations properly approaching it? Because are they talking? I'll speak to what organizations that I've been in, for example.
Okay.
I think very often they're taking a sort of diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging sort of approach. Usually just on diversity and inclusion. They haven't probably moved into equity and belonging. But they're taking that approach to it when maybe they should be taking a more holistic approach and thinking about things like burnout. Are they just trying, or are organizations really trying to hire someone like you to come in and dissect what is happening in their culture to say, no, these folks are burnt out. These people are experiencing a lack of belonging. This group over here, and you can't have this cookie cutter response to all of them.
Well, you have just said a mouthful. I mean, this is not a week-long show, right?
Right.
Sorry.
No, and that was such a loaded, beautiful question. And from my perspective, what I usually see happens is we want this training. We don't want you to do an organizational or cultural assessment. We don't want we don't want too much change. This is the problem, address it. So they're coming in with their already biased opinion of what the issue is when they really haven't even diagnosed it and can't even um, really state what the problem is. It's like me saying, let me tell my children how I am as a parent to them. I'm sure they can tell me a lot more than I can. I think I'm doing the absolute best, but I'm sure they have some areas of improvement for me. So it is very difficult to tease out until you get those anonymous culture surveys. You do some observations. You really look at what goes on within that system, and so many times the people who are impacted and affected by the isms are not in the room making the decisions. Have you all seen that as well?
Every day.
If I had a ding, 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 I need like a like touchdown buzz or something. If y'all out there in the comments has that been your experience? Let us know. Drop a comment in. I would say this. So in my work, even as a coach or when I'm having conversations with organizations, it's right. Okay, you want a training about what though? Right? Because if we don't diagnose the problem, we can do classes, cheerlead, have all of this fun stuff, in which we do. So everybody comes to the pep rally and go right back into that toxicity. Like it's like, we get into that pool of toxicity, and then we're gonna have a party.
Check. We've done the training. What was that actress who said it? And I'm bringing up something that I shouldn't. Zoe Saldana, who said, "Well, now that we have a black president, racism no longer exists." I'm like, are you kidding? That's the same. That's the same mentality that you often see with organizations. Well, we did the training.
Yeah, we did the training, not knowing what we're training to, and I think it's very powerful. And like you said, that because even now, as you watch the news or watch these shows or any, what are talking heads, they're trying to figure out, well, why are people not coming back to work? At first, you said it was because of the little unemployment checks that they got or the stimulus checks that they got. And okay, now that money done ran out. They still don't want to come back. And it's like now they still, it's child care. It's more than just child. It's child care and it's elder care. So, all right, we want to address that. Well, why people still don't want to come back? And it's much deeper, in terms of people are overwhelmed. They're tired and they figure like, I can work differently. I can choose to do differently.
Absolutely, and I can't imagine the amount of money that people saved in not commuting, not buying that Starbucks coffee every day, not having to go to working lunches or whatever it is. So I've been out of a formal workplace for about the last 12 years or so. I have worked within organizations, and I know when the pandemic jumped off and Black Lives Matter and all that stuff was going on, I was so thankful, and even thankful now that I didn't have to return back into those organizational structures, because I had a lot of women trying to cope with, now I've been exposed to my fellow coworkers or supervisors that I've seen. I know their political opinions. Now I know their thoughts about this. And how do I now address them and look them in the face? Like having true anxiety attacks because I I don't know how to engage with you anymore. I know who you are.
Absolutely. We have a comment here from Rosalind. She says nonprofits loves to study it and write white papers about it. No action, just discussion and more discussion.
I've definitely seen that. I've worked, did a retreat and where we did a strategic plan for a nonprofit. And I tell you truly, they were concerned that if they got together, that the organization might fall apart because of the dynamics that were going on. And I gave them this beautiful plan, told them exactly there are parts of the plan that are still not implemented 2.5 years later.
Mhm.
But so she's exactly right.
So, I mean, Dr. Kimberly, to that point, and you're right, we don't have a week to talk about this, and we definitely don't have time to talk about all of Christina's problems. But
Let's talk.
but I'm curious, so obviously at the beginning of the pandemic, I think a lot of people experienced burnout because it was this desire to pile on more and more work in order to prove that you were actually working. Because in the workplace, you believe, right? They see you at your computer, even though I know folks don't be doing that a lot of times, but
right.
They saw you at your computer, they saw you in the cafeteria, they saw you in the hallway. So because you were there present, you had to have been working. But once you got home, it was like the number of meetings skyrocketed. And of course, don't even begin to talk about all the technological issues that were going on.
Right.
It was like this desire to prove that we were actually working, and so people were getting burnt out and overwhelmed. And then I think there was a reflection or inflection point, maybe, where folks who had been getting those checks, because a lot of people in certain brackets didn't get them, but people who did get them, they realized, wait a minute, you mean to tell me if I don't go to work, I can get paid more than me going every day, driving, like you said, spending that money on coffee and gas and all of these things. So there were a lot of different factors, obviously. But I guess to the question is, why are organizations then so afraid of having those self self-examination? Because ultimately, wouldn't you expect that if you are honest with yourself and stop putting the same little salve and band-aid over the bullet wound, that it's never going to get healed? If you just gone ahead and do the work, ultimately you'd have the results that you're looking for. Why are they so afraid of doing the work?
You want my honest opinion, or you
I
want me to lie
do.
to you?
No, I want your honest opinion, because
Well, give us the honest opinion and tell us the lies
Right.
that's being told by the
Yeah.
organizations. How about that?
Right. So honestly, I think the root cause of it is people don't like change. I mean, give me a different toothpaste than what I buy, or give me that generic ketchup brand. I don't want that. It might be better, it might be healthier, but I know, I know Heinz, and I know my Crest. I don't want nothing else. I want to look at it. And so when you're talking about organizational change and the threat to those dynamics and what does that mean and what does that look like, that is striking fear in the hearts. Will I lose my personal power, authority, and autonomy? I think that's very terrifying. I had the opportunity to during my doctoral program to go to South Africa, and we went to the Office of Economic Development, and one of the people from our school, she was there, and she was an Afrikaner, and she had such a hard time being in there because it was blackity black black black. And she said, "But is it fair that my husband hasn't had a promotion in 10 years?" Like that was really, that bothered her very much. She couldn't see the fact that there was this oppressive system that had been there for decades, and all she could see, my husband hasn't been promoted in 10 years. So does that answer part of it? And I think what they tell, the lie that gets told, is that we really need to examine the impact of these changes before we implement too many. We don't want to do it too fast. We need to have the right people in place to bring about these changes, right?
Mhm.
What have you found, Demetria and Christina?
I think you said it, and I know Christina with some of the work she does, and with different these employee resource groups and all of this stuff and all this extra work. But when it rubber meets the road to actually put some action forward, then it's like, then everybody starts backpedaling, not funding, right? They don't want to fund or to really do the work in terms of making those changes, or even just reshaping organizational cultures, like you said. And people are these meetings for meetings sake, we get used to it because it's just way of saying it's somebody's way of control, right?
Oh,
That's
yes.
like that. So it's like all of these systems are ways of monitoring and showing that we are in control, or that we're running things. And really what we've known, and if you've worked in any corporate setting, most people could work flexible hours. Most people can work project-based assignments. But
Absolutely.
if you blow that up, then you kind of really blow up the whole system, and nobody really wants to blow up the whole system.
Right.
So yeah, and so Dr. Kimberly, it sounds to me like what we're really saying at the heart of it, and it goes back to your comment earlier, is systemic.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is a power structure even in our workplaces. And in order to keep that power structure in place and functioning in the way it was designed to function, that means you really can't address what's at the core of these issues. Because I guess the way I look at it is like, well, we've seen all the studies, right? There's more than enough information out there to tell us that if we have more diverse teams, they're more productive. That if you have more if
Work-life balance,
you have better work. Well, I don't even like, we don't like
Work-life
that.
integration. How about
Yes.
integration. Well, I said work-life balance is a myth. But yeah, I know what you're saying. But that's their buzzword. So I'm just
so what
throwing it out there.
happens is we start to get, for me, it feels like organizations are willing to put on a good face and do these little small things like, we're just gonna, company culture, we're gonna change the company culture by changing these words that we have, or changing something, like tweaking a term in our mission statement, and they
putting
think
in a
that,
few pictures of put some colorful people on our
yes, change our
website.
websites, and we're gonna change our logo, and that, how, see, when you saw these interlocking hands, that was supposed to breed a new shift in the culture. And it's like, just do the work. But to your point, the work takes time and it takes investment, and you're not going to undo the systemic issues overnight or in a week. But then again, it sounds like, but do people really want them? If they did really want that change, then it would probably result in some people who are CEOs not maybe being the CEO.
Yeah.
Some people on the board of directors maybe wouldn't have a position there. And who wants that? So I guess that's ultimately why these changes don't happen. So I guess what can we do on an individual
Yeah.
level to
Well, that's
protect
what I want
our
to get
peace?
to. The burnout cure.
Yeah,
Tell us
yes.
Right.
what the cure is for burnout. So I
Right.
dropped some let me reset, let folks know that they're tuned in now to Hey Sister. We are live. We're here with Dr. Kimberly. She's the author of the Burnout Cure. And we dropped some links in the comments for you all to go back and look. She told us that there's still 12 stages to burnout, child. Who knew? So we dropped some articles in there about the definition of burnout by the World Health Organization, how it's defined. Um, Maybe there's ICD code for it because we're not on ICD. That tell you how long I've been out of the industry because I was about to say ICD 9. They on ICD 11,
11,
but
yeah, I
those
think
are
so.
the diagnostic codes that are used for insurance companies. So there are codes out there for burnout. So if you're experiencing any of these symptoms or experiencing some of the things that we've talked about or dealing with some of these isms and trying to figure out how to navigate it, maybe or maybe not your insurance will cover it, but EAP, it may be covered under there, but definitely talk to your healthcare professional. But the bottom line is Dr. Kimberly says she has a cure. So tell us what the burnout cure is. How did you cure yourself of that cycle of overwork and overwhelm?
Yes, ma'am. I want to address Christina's last thing, and then we'll go right into that. One of the things you said, what can we do as individuals? And even in my organization, it's a struggle for me to be inclusive and diverse because that's one of the things I said. Well, Kim, you've got to stop hiring people that look like you. You know, if you want to have a more diverse culture and be more inclusive, and so that's been a challenge for me. It's like, okay, what you're proposing, you have got to implement yourself, or how can you help? I've got to know what the struggle is myself. So I'm going through that struggle and how not to micromanage remote teams, even though I'm teaching people. I know I I have to deal with myself because I'm in that Gen X culture. And I don't I'm probably a lot older than most people out here, but that's a whole different mindset about how to work with people and how to give them do project-based work. But that's what I've switched to try and help people enjoy and build some resilience within my system so that people enjoy coming to work and want to continue to do that. So cure your burnout, the burnout cure. Exactly. The first thing that I recommend is consider. And so it's a 5C system. And the first one is consider. That's where we do an assessment of what's going on. What is the problem? What exactly is not going correct in your life? Is it family? Is it work? Is it recreation? Are you engaged in inappropriate substances that aren't the best for you? Where is the dysfunction occurring? Because you can't address anything until you know what's happening. And I often ask people to do a values and energy expenditure, and that's where I ask them to list the 5 most important things in their life, right? And most people will list off family and whatever they have going on. Then I ask them to create a pie and separate it and show where do they spend their time. You can either do it in you can use a 24-hour day or a week, and most people are often surprised to see where they put their energy does not align with what they say is most important and most valuable to them. And that's often quite a shock. Like, wait a minute, I said I put God first, but I give him him or her 10 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
whatever your belief is. Then I ask them to conserve. That's the second C. Where can you conserve your energy? Where are you putting it out too much? Is it in are you expending too much energy at work? Are you I had one young lady who not only was working overtime at work, then she'd go home, literally make 5-course meals. Her family is saying, like, can we just order a pizza sometimes? She was doing the laundry for her husband, her almost adult son, and a teenage son, um, and folding everything for them. She was doing taxes for her parents. Um, she was a resource for other people in the family. She was doing taxes, and I'm not even able to list out all the things that she was doing. So we had to look at, okay, you need to set some boundaries. We need to bring some of this back in. Um, then the second C is create. What things can you create to bring joy into your life? Whether that is re-engaging with some things that used to give me joy. Like, believe it or not, I broke out my flute that I used to play when I was in high school. I actually bought some jacks and started doing that. I also began redoing quilts, and so they shouldn't be things that overwhelm you, but things that you can look at and say, "Wow, I did this," and it brings me some joy. Sometimes it's through philanthropy. Okay, um, connect. Many times when we're burnt out, we're not connecting with those things that are important to us or those people. So those girlfriends that you used to kiki with, or a pastor that you used to have a long time ago, or maybe you used to volunteer at the Boys and Girls Club. For me, one of the things that I like to connect to is nature. That's extremely important for me. The water gives me energy. Sometimes I will take off my shoes and just connect to the earth, and it does something so healing for my spirit. I tell people, even if you just want to drop a Cheeto on the ground and watch ants destroy it, you're connecting to the earth. You're watching that. It's distracting you from all of these higher things, and contribute. Where can you contribute? What makes you feel good to give to, instead of so that might be, I know during this time of year, a lot of people want to feed the homeless. I always think people forget that homeless eat all year, but then maybe they want to contribute in that way. Maybe they want to give donate to a GoFundMe, donate to an organization. What the, what is There's a tech thing in Florida, right? An organization with one of the ladies that you coach, isn't it not Demetria?
Oh, well, there's,
Black
yeah, yeah,
Orlando Tech or something.
yeah, yeah.
Contribute to things that make you feel good, and all of those, they combine, and you begin to reshape your life.
Okay. So we have, I dropped it in the notes here in the comments, is the 5C system to cure burnout. Consider, conserve, create, connect, and contribute.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Make sure I got them all there.
Right. And so I really, we spend a lot of time oftentimes on consider and conserve. The last three just tend to flow. Um, but changing people's mindsets about what they're already doing and what they want to do differently is where I tend to spend the bulk of the time. And setting healthy boundaries. All that occurs in those first two. And if we can break through those first two, the rest just seem to flow, because you have more energy, you have more interest, and you have more ability to pour into yourself and to others in appropriate ways. Because it's one thing to contribute in ways that are draining, and to than there is to contribute in ways that give you life and nurture your own values, if that makes sense.
Absolutely makes perfect sense. But one of the things you talked about is cycle. So you experienced it more than one time, right? And
Yes.
so how can we permanently like break that cycle, interrupt that cycle?
Right. And that was really key and important for me, not going back. And that's being committed to your healing, making it a priority. Now, do I get to do everything that I suggest 100% of the time every day? No. Some days I cannot commit to my 2 hours uninterrupted of me time to do whatever, but I'll look at how am I feeling. I check into my experiences and how I'm feeling, and I honor that. And so if there are days when I'm supposed to do X, but I don't have the energy to do X, I honor that. And I rearrange so that I accomplish what I want to accomplish, but it doesn't always have to happen right now. One of the other things I want to mention as well is People don't have to feel guilty about not being an entrepreneur or not having a side hustle or not securing the bag. Some people just want to work their job and come home. And that's okay too. I think this culture has us feeling like we need to accomplish X, we accomplish Y, we accomplish Z. And some people want a much simpler existence.
Seven
And that's
streams of
okay.
income, Dr. Kimberly. What you talking about? We got to have seven streams now.
Well, but and some people are fortunate enough to not to have that.
Mm.
Or want something simpler. I mean, I definitely believe in multiple streams of income, but there are others who just want a very pure, simple existence.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dr. Kimberly, to that point, how then have you maybe seen over the last few years social media contribute to this extending our burnout, especially as we are in this, like you said, secure the bag culture. You know, you gotta never sleep, and all of this idea that you have to constantly be on a grind. How has social media contributed to our burnout?
Well, you all alluded to that. Some, I think, was it Demetria was talking about this 24/7 news cycle, and social media is a part of that. And it appears, I mean, it's always there, it's always present, and just being on so many platforms, I mean, that's exhausting in and of itself. And it's often a false narrative because it's just a snippet. It's a snippet of what's going on for some people. It's a snippet of what's going on in their business, in their personal lives, and so you're not getting reality. I'm showing you what I want you to see, but you don't see everything that's going on. Like I joked and said, uh, there's something different happening on the top and on the bottom right here. I have on sweatpants right now, just to be honest. But that's not what you see on top.
Mm-hmm.
That's the image that I want to present to you. So I think that definitely contributes to it. What have you all seen in terms of how social media contributes to this?
Well, I think you made the point, especially during the pandemic, and listen, that it, you know, from a positive standpoint, the pandemic helped push me and the women that I'm working with on my documentary. It pushed us to say, okay, let's get this done, because
Yes.
we recognize that this was a unique time, and so that we may not have another opportunity like this in order to pursue some of the things that are outside of, say, your day-to-day job, right? Or if you're an entrepreneur, outside of your, that create piece that you talked about there. But then, as Demetria was saying about the seven streams of income, I can tell you early in the pandemic, I myself felt like I'm not doing enough, because we, and I talked about it earlier, when we started this thing, I would be on meetings and calls, and it would, my day would go so long. Like, I felt compelled as soon as I woke up to turn on my computer, which meant
Mhm.
that, you know, I would start working even before I, to be honest, had taken a shower and gotten myself together for the day. I had already started working. And then it started getting further and further into the evening. It made it difficult. And a lot of people were having a really difficult time because, and maybe that's partly imposter syndrome, we believe that in order for us to prove that we're being productive, we have to do all this stuff. And
Right.
then that seemed to take a shift away from like your day-to-day job to, okay, on top of taking all of that on extra to show that you're actually working and being productive, now you should be writing a book or publishing a blog or starting your own business, or create,
Right.
investing in real estate. Like, now you needed to have been doing something else, because what else are you're on? And D Nice created the whole
Oh, yes.
club quarantine. And I mean, obviously, look, it has been very lucrative for him, but it was like everybody should have had their version of whatever it was, where somebody came out of, used the pandemic to their benefit.
Wisely. Right.
Right, wisely. It was this attitude that we all should have been doing at least one or two things, or else we wasted our time. And it's like, I know for myself, there were days that I felt really guilty and not I'm laughing at Rosalind's comment. Yeah, don't
We got the
forget.
comment.
Yeah, she said, don't forget baking artisan bread. Right. You know, it got to that point where it felt like I was, we were supposed to be doing everything.
50, 11 things, like I
Yeah.
said. And I think there's a difference between having multiple streams of income where it's dependent upon your labor and
Mhm.
some passive multiple streams of income and building that and getting support so that you're living in your genius rather than doing all the grunt work. So,
Mhm.
I've hired my children to do a couple of things.
No, that is fair. Oh, and that was another thing. So, about the social media. I know my sister appears frozen on my screen. I don't. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That was another aspect of it as well. Is like because we were starting all these businesses and new ventures and trying all these new things, the very place you were going in terms of social media telling you should be doing more was also the place you had to go in order to promote all this new stuff that you were doing.
Yeah, right. It was it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
And I know that's something that I've has personally been the struggle myself. Like how intrusive do
Mhm.
I want to be in my life with social media, and how many platforms, and what is going to be my commitment to that? And I think that's really a personal question, because so many people, welcome
Mhm.
back. We just kept on talking.
Y'all keep on talking, and I'm telling y'all this. Hey, Wi-Fi does what it
Mhm.
wants to do some days.
Amen. It definitely does. Well, I definitely didn't want to go over your time. I didn't know if we had.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I will say this, and this is the last thing I'll say, and Demetri, I'll throw it back to you. So the question that we had for the audience: are you spinning or winning? How do you know when you're starting to spin as opposed to starting to win? So just based on what we were saying, the double-edged sword of social media, you get on it and you're told you ain't doing enough. Now you're doing all the stuff. Now you got to get back on it to promote all the stuff that you're doing. It feels like there is the constant news cycle that you're always inundated with the stories and things that's happening. So now I got to be fighting for civil rights across the board, and now I have to, we have to be trying brand new recipes, and then you still got to be exercising 24
Got to
hours a day.
exercise. You got to get 8 hours of sleep. You got to hydrate.
Yes.
And you got to look good doing it the whole time.
The
You
whole
got to
time.
be flawless.
You gotta have six-pack abs in order to do all this too.
Mhm.
So, so how do you begin to recognize if you're spinning versus winning?
Well, I really do feel like that's a personal decision about what is your normal, and what, because some people very easily delve into social media, and you can be in all the platforms, and that just gives them so much joy. Uh, Whereas for some of us others, it's just like, ugh, I got to, rather than I get to. So really looking at um, what gives you joy, and what takes energy away from you, and your dysfunction is characterized by, excuse me, let me repeat that. It becomes dysfunctional when you're no longer able to do the things that are important to you. So is your lifestyle getting away from you? Is it controlling you rather than you directing how your life should be? That's the biggest question that I had. That's when I feel like I'm spinning out of control.
Mhm.
When my life, it kind of has me going hither, yither, and yon, and I'm feeling like Chicken Little running around, like the sky is falling, rather than me making choices about what's important. So, and I think as anybody grows in your role, in your job, as a mother, or as in your own business, you really need to be clear about where am I going? What am I supposed to do? What is within my mission? Because there are so many things and opportunities that come for your way, but that doesn't mean come your way. That doesn't mean that you need to choose everything that comes your way. It's
Mhm.
okay to say no to some
Mhm.
things
Yeah.
that aren't meant for you. Is that what you found? Dimitri, I see you shaking your head.
Well, I mean, no is a complete sentence. That's what I say
Amen.
all the time. And we don't say no enough. But I think to your point, it's first that clarity on my own mission, my own purpose, not the one my mama gave me or my cousin or my sister, my friend, or even my spouse or my children, right? You can find yourself spinning around because the way the world's set up now is like all these kid driven activities will have you like on the whirlwind. And it's like, no, 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 no. You have to make some of the choices about how our life is going to be set up. And your kid don't have to be in everything, right? To still be healthy, happy, and whole. And we see, even because parents are like, well, I don't spent this money for you to do this activity. Like,
You go do it.
they stuck in it, right? And so there's just so many things that kind of contribute to us, like really, like you said, our lifestyle getting away from us. And we need to get back to centering around what's most important, centering around our values, centering around how we choose to live, right? Versus just random, like going by the clock every day. No, how do I want to live every day? How do I want to actually literally wake up and live every day? So I think that's important. So we drop your website here. It's scrolling across the bottom so folks can reach you at drkimberlywilson.com. Anything you want to say to the folks in closing about the burnout, the cure, how they can reach you, or some things that they can look out for in their own lives?
Yes. So I think one of the things that I'd like to close out with, to how to have a successful holiday season. And we just talked about intention. So if you decide that you are going to engage with family members and go to a big or small gathering, be clear about what's important for you and what your intention is for this gathering. And if you know that you're a person that has certain needs or requirements, say, I don't even want to get into vax or non-vax or whatever it is, be clear about that. Ask the host where you're going. Are your needs going to be met? What are your boundaries? Maybe you don't need to participate if it's going to violate those boundaries. Decide ahead of time some things, such as what is your exit strategy if things do get hairy, if people drink too much, if they're consuming too much, if people violate your financial boundaries, because a lot of people have had some very hard times. Yes, it takes a village, but you can't be the village financier either. So make some decisions about that. If you have a partner, what are the limits? Don't allow yourself to get wrangled into a situation without an exit strategy. So those are the main things.
Look, we could do a whole show.
I'm about to say, you got to come back next month. We need to, at least before the Christmas holidays, do a whole show on just how do you not become crazy for the holidays.
Well, I mean, Christmas or Thanksgiving Day. I mean, we got a guest on next week. We need to let me tell you something. That whole conversation, especially now, people need to have, and families need to have, and people get all in their feelings about where you should be or where you should be.
Yes,
because we need to have it, because we were talking the other day about, and also all of the stuff like right now with this whole supply chain shortage. It's like, do we need all of the stuff, or should we be creating other things? Other things take precedence, or should be taking precedent, right, in these gatherings. So if you don't, I know for our family, for example, we have for the last several years, we'll go to a restaurant and that's it on Thanksgiving Day. We have our little leftovers and we're good. But we have family members that are like, how dare thee go to the restaurant? And it's like, how dare thee continue to be stressed out cooking from 2 a.m. until the guests arrive, and you still bringing stuff out, and we at the table trying to get a meal, and you still trying to cook,
and nobody wants to help, or you don't want certain people to help.
No, right. Because you don't want to eat everybody potato salad. So
That
Yes.
part right there. Well, Dr. Kimberly, thank you so much for joining us. And yes, we definitely have to have you back, maybe sooner rather than later, to really talk about that families and dealing with yes, catered Thanksgiving is your saving grace, honey. Catered everything is my saving grace at this point in the game. But and I can cook, FYI. So anybody wants to know.
but that's another thing.
If
Why
I don't want to, that's my
why
business.
do we have to prove that we can cook? Whether you can cook or not. You gonna eat, right?
You didn't have to cook.
You didn't have to do it.
Well, look, we're gonna have to have that conversation because families getting through this season, and even like you said, a lot of families people experience burnout, just the holiday season burnout, whether it's because they're still dealing with the trauma of having lost a loved one and grief and so many things, or even the trauma of who's going to be there. Like there's all kinds of things that we dealing with around that. So
Financial.
the money, honey. Anyway, I'm going on too long. Thank y'all for watching tonight. Thank you for tuning in live to Hey Sister. Dr. Kimberly, you and Christina hold the line and just wave to the people. We say good night, everybody.
Good night.